Former Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava has been one of the most disappointing players in all of college football this season. But has he been the most disappointing?
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Thursday morning Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Cain, a member of the VolQuest.com team here in town covering your Tennessee Volunteers. And, of course, the host of Locked On Vols, free and available wherever you get your podcasts every single weekday morning and after football games. It's when you wake up. Appreciate you guys for being here. Today's episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, where customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. That is the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Got a big show coming up here today. Throwback Thursday with Neyland Press Corps coming up with Noah Taylor in segment number 3, 1957. Tennessee's win over Texas A&M in the Gator Bowl, but a lot to that football game. A history lesson on your Vols coming up in segment number 3. Segment 2, going to take a look at UAB, the Blazers, some of the personnel. Who are the Blazers? What does Trent Dilfer have this season for Tennessee coming up on Saturday? But first, we're going to dive into a CBS Sports article about the most disappointing players so far in the 2025 season, this college football season. The first quarter's kind of over with. Really, the first quarter, in my opinion, is the first 4 games. That's going to be after this weekend for most teams if nobody else has had a bye. I don't know where anybody's bye weeks are, but nonetheless, it's kind of the first quarter, right? And then, well, I guess that'd be the first third. Yeah, so the first quarter's over. Yeah, all right, simple math, right? Nobody said we'd be doing math here. The first quarter of the season is over. The first third of the season will be over in terms of games played after this weekend. But nonetheless, it's the sample size. It's not great, but it's enough of a sample size where we can kind of start drawing some conclusions about who's been great, who's been bad, what teams are real, what teams could be contenders. And CBS Sports put out an article about some of the most disappointing players so far in the 2025 season. And there's no Tennessee football player on here, thankfully, but there's a lot of Tennessee connections and or players on teams that Tennessee is going to play still on the schedule. So I thought it was very relevant. Plus, a former Tennessee quarterback is on this list. And I'm not trying to bait with the title and the thumbnail and all that. But I did think it was interesting that Nico Iamaleava's name is on this article. Obviously, things have gone horribly wrong at UCLA. Deshaun Foster fired on Sunday. They're 0-3 or 0-4, whatever it is. And Nico has not been lighting the world on fire whatsoever. This is what they had to say about Nico Iamaleava. He is officially the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He is the 7th name mentioned on this list. I don't know if there's any particular order. But this is what the article says about Nico Iamaleava. Quote, Iamaleava seemed to be finding rhythm late last season at Tennessee, but has taken a step backwards at UCLA, much to the delight of all fans. He has 3 touchdown passes to 3 interceptions, just over 600 passing yards. His body language after mistakes has raised concerns as he shows little urgency to chase down tacklers after interceptions. On the ground, he has 139 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 fumble. Clearly, I don't have to tell you guys this. Enough of you guys stay up late and watch Nico play on Saturday nights or Friday nights or whenever he's playing. I don't have to tell you. It's been really, really bad. And it's kind of interesting. You've got the head coach that's been fired, and so that portal window opens up for all the players on that team. Same with Virginia Tech. And it's interesting that they did this like a week before that cutoff at 4 weeks. That cutoff meaning you can redshirt. If you play in 4 games or less, you can redshirt. So a lot of players are on those teams are probably going to be opting out right now, which is very puzzling to why those administrations wanted to do it at this point in time. Nico, what's he going to do, right? I mean, I'm not saying he's going to quit on the team and not play anymore this year, but certainly I would not be shocking whatsoever. In fact, I would be more shocked if Nico Iamaleava stayed at UCLA after this season. I am sure that the camp is shopping him around, trying to get him to another landing spot, or at least that's going to come officially when the transfer portal opens. But it's open now for those players, so it'll be interesting to see if that's going to turn into anything. But no doubt, Nico. This isn't a dunk on Nico's segment. I'm going to mention a lot of other players, but I thought we'd lead off here because obviously Nico was the quarterback at Tennessee last year. It has not gone well whatsoever. Jeremiah Love, running back at Notre Dame, is on this list, and certainly he's not off to the best start. Only 127 yards and on 33 carries for Notre Dame. That's been a little disappointing for sure this year. Caden Proctor, Alabama offensive tackle, really had a bad game against Florida State. Talking about him in this article about how he profiles better as a guard playing out of position. Run blocking's okay, but certainly not to the level of a unanimous All-American. LaNorris Sellers is on this list, and that's easy, right? I mean, I thought he was getting way, way, way too much hype coming into the season for sure. He has 2 touchdown passes, 1 interception, completing 64% of his passes, 431 yards. Only 45 yards rushing on the ground this season, which is very interesting because I think he's a really good runner. He's been sacked 8 times. That's a league high 8 times. That offensive line is certainly not helping him. And, of course, he left the Vanderbilt game with a concussion, so we'll see if he's even ready to play this week. LaNorris Sellers has been very much a disappointment. Cade Klubnik of Clemson has been a massive disappointment. It was weird, right? Tennessee played DJ Ugalele left or transfer portal left or whatever. Cade Klubnik started that Orange Bowl back in 2022. It was kind of like, all right, here's our quarterback. Here's the next thing. We're officially moving on to the Cade Klubnik era, and Tennessee did a pretty good job against him in that game when it's true freshman year. 2023, he had a horrible year. 2024, he had a great year. And then so far in 3 games in 2025, it's not been good whatsoever. He's completing under 60% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, 633 yards. There have been some wide receiver drops. The pressure's not been great with him, but only 59 yards rushing. Also has a turnover on the ground. He's fumbled the football. So Cade Klubnik has not looked good so far this season. The article leads off with obviously the headliner, and that's Arch Manning. I still think there's talent there. We'll see if he can turn some things around. But, man, especially where expectations were, and the expectations were always out of this world, just silly and stupid for him, especially this year, just like they were for Nico coming into his Tennessee career. But he was booed. He was booed against UTEP last game. He's completing 55% of his passes, 6 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. Man, yeah, is that right? Is that 6 interceptions and 3 touchdowns? That is not good. Leads the team in rushing with 121 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. That's good, but if you're leading the team in rushing, that's not great. Texas has not looked good to begin this year, and it's a big reason for that is Arch Manning. I actually lied. Arch Manning did not lead off this conversation. It was DJ Lagway, and I still think DJ Lagway's got tremendous talent. I think he's got probably the highest upside of any quarterback in the country, but I never, and you guys know me, if you're everydayers, I never understood why he was getting so much praise and so much hype coming into the season. As a true freshman last year, he played in 10, 11 games, started 8, 9 games. He completed only 59% of his passes, 12 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. It's not like he was lighting the world on fire. And it has gone horribly, horribly wrong for DJ Lagway so far this year. Trying to look at the stats real quick. 629 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. Turned the football over, pick 6s. He's fumbled. It is just, he's been a turnover machine waiting to happen. I mean, the fact that Florida turned the football over 5 times and still only lost by 10 points on the road in Death Valley at night against LSU, that's actually impressive. I'm not sure. I don't know how that works. But some of these big-name quarterbacks that were on all the lists coming into the season have not gotten off to a great start. DJ Lagway's number 1. Arch Manning's is one of those. Cade Klubnik's one of those. LaNorris Sellers is one of those. That's 4 quarterbacks. 4 quarterbacks I just mentioned. Nico wasn't really on those lists, but he's another quarterback on this list. Sam Levitt's on this list. Gio Lopez, South Carolina to North Carolina. South Alabama to North Carolina in the spring transfer portal. Jaden Ott's on this list, and of course he'll come to Neyland Stadium at some point this year in November. I don't understand. Like, certainly he had a great 2023. Injuries derailed his 2024 season. And then so far, he's only got 9 carries for 17 yards, no receptions. I understand that Oklahoma returned its leading back from a season ago, but they are underutilizing Jaden Ott, that is for sure. So these are some of the most recognizable names in college football. However, they've been super, super disappointing to begin the 2025 season. Again, only 3 games are played, so there's time to turn things around, right? I mean, Arch Manning, the team's good. Can he turn things around? Cade Klubnik, Clemson might be a bit overrated. LaNorris Sellers, I thought the team was overrated to begin with. If Alabama's going to be good, that means Caden Proctor's probably playing pretty well. I'll be shocked if Jeremiah Love's not a bigger factor for Notre Dame moving forward. I mean, he's pretty much all the offense, coming back, right? I don't know what to expect from Nico moving forward. Coach, interim staff, they're off this week. It's been a train wreck. If Nico even finishes the season with at UCLA, if he doesn't, that wouldn't shock me. I don't know. It's certainly not rooting for the downfall of one player, one specific player. I know a lot of Tennessee fans are, but that's going to be a weird deal to see how the rest of the year plays out for Nico. But certainly Nico's been very, very disappointing. I know Nico was listed on some of these lists, and there were some people saying that UCLA could be a playoff contender. Woo! Want to talk about a swing and a miss, a big old miss. Sam Leavitt, again, is one of those guys that were on all those lists. He's only completing 58% of his passes, 176 yards per game, 5 touchdowns, interceptions, 3 of them. So, yeah, no Tennessee players on this list. That's good. Quarterback JOEY Aguilar has been fantastic again this season. It's truly it's wild how some things work out sometimes. Nico leaves you at the altar, not at the altar, but the last day of spring ball, and Tennessee's scrambling, trying to find a quarterback. You get this guy that played a couple years in JUCO, then a couple years in the Sun Belt, and then was going back home to play for UCLA, and then the Nico thing happens, and he comes here, and it's like, oh, man, well, let's see what we got. And then, you got more than you bargained for. Man, it's been a good ride with JOEY Aguilar so far. We'll see if he can continue to keep it up. But some of the most disappointing players in the 2025 season so far, a lot of ties to the University of Tennessee, but no Tennessee football player is on that list. Hey, when we come back, let's look at the Blazers, Trent Dilfers of UAB. Tennessee's next opponent on Saturday. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP. Who delivered? Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered the most. Let's break it down. So we talked about Chris Brazzell and how he was fantastic earlier in the week. Let's go ahead and talk about Braylon Staley. Braylon Staley led the team in receptions last week. He's second to Chris Brazzell on the team so far. He's had big play after big play through the first 3 weeks of the season. He's been great. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week again, he's been putting on performances. It's not a fluke. Braylon Staley is on a streak. And just like that, Braylon Staley delivered for the Tennessee Volunteers. DoorDash can deliver your Saturdays. With DoorDash, you're saving money every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season long. You can save up to $250, including $100 credit in DoorDash. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period. It's through November the 18th. So big shout out to DoorDash. Big shout out to FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season, it is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's quick, easy, my best way to add a little bit more energy to my lazy Sundays, right? Watching football makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on that fantasy lineup on a Sunday afternoon. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. FanDuel, it's where you can make every moment more. All right, guys, welcome back to your Thursday Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Cain. Appreciate you guys for being here. I haven't talked a whole lot about UAB this week. We'll talk more about the Blazers with Boogie coming up on Friday. But, it's one of those games, right? Tennessee, according to our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, favored by 39.5 points. It's one of those games where Tennessee can win by as much as Tennessee wants to win by. And that's the nature of the beast. I mean, UAB's probably, I don't have it in front of me, but I think UAB's making $1.5 million to come over here. Come up here, get your money, take your butt whooping, and go home. But what about UAB? What are the Tennessee connections, if any? What's UAB look like so far this year? Again, we'll talk more about it tomorrow. But here's the skinny on the UAB Blazers. Coached by Trent Dilfer, who is a former NFL quarterback, longtime NFL quarterback, former coach of Lipscomb Academy in Nashville, where he coached Caleb Beasley, Tennessee safety, and Edwin Spillman, Tennessee linebacker. Third season for Dilfer at UAB, which is 2-1 on the season so far. Last year was horrible for UAB. They were 3-9 a season ago, with losses by the 9 losses combined 189 points. They're 9-18 overall under Trent Dilfer. I remember they came out and made an announcement that they were going to keep and retain Trent Dilfer. Anytime you make that announcement or anything, you know that things have been just horribly, horribly wrong. They compete, or actually they're 0-5 all-time against Tennessee. All 5 of those games have come at Neyland Stadium, and Tennessee's won them handily, except for a double overtime win, I believe, back in 2010. So Tennessee, again, here we go. Tennessee's 5-0 all-time against UAB. Last matchup was in 2019 where Tennessee won 30-7. The Vols have scored more than 30 points in 3 of the 5 matchups to go along with a 17-10 win, so won by a touchdown in 2005. A double overtime 32-29 victory in 2010. Man, they needed to pull out all those stops right in that year, but I don't think that's going to be the case this year. So what about the offense for UAB? Well, averaging 35 points, 451 yards of total offense, 303 yards going through the air, 148 yards on the ground. They played Alabama State, they played Navy, and they played Akron. They have not scored a point in the second half the last 2 weeks. I'll need to double-check that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. They scored like 31 points in the first half, and then Akron nearly came back and beat them last week. Not a very good second-half football team. Still not running the football probably as best as they want to, but what they're going to do is they're going to not necessarily stretch the field vertically an awful lot, but they probably can do it with Jalen Kitna, the quarterback I'll talk about here in a moment. They're going to do a lot of screens, trying to spread you out sideline to sideline. And I think that's something that Tennessee needs to work on for sure, because Georgia, Syracuse did it a little bit, and Tennessee needs to defend that better, right? Because Alabama's going to do that, Mississippi State's going to do that, get those linebackers running. But that's a lot of what that game is. Jalen Kitna so far, son of longtime NFL quarterback John Kitna. Jalen Kitna formerly started at Florida. He's at UAB now. 892 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 70% completion, so pretty good start to the season. Still, they're -3 in the turnover battle. The offense has turned the football over 4 times. The defense only has 1 takeaway. It's got a QB rating of 158.7. He's averaging 297 a contest. So Kitna's thrown the football pretty well, no doubt. Running back, UTEP transfer Javon Jackson, who I remember writing about last year whenever Tennessee played UTEP. He transferred in, and he's got 277 yards, 6 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns on 46 attempts. He's kind of been that focal point in the backfield. Out at receiver, you've got Corey Milliner and Iverson Hooks. Milliner's got 268 yards receiving, 17 receptions, 3 touchdowns. Hooks has 16 catches, 229 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Brandon Hawkins Jr. is a third option. They also like to involve their running backs out of the backfield, throwing the football to them, like Beebe, Solomon Beebe, a running back. He's got 15 catches for 156 yards and a score, so they'll have to look out for that. UAB replaced 4 starters on the offensive line, only brought back 1 starter. So the offense, okay. Offense is okay. You'd expect that, from a Trent Dilfer coach team. Defensively, it was horrific a season ago. In fact, Trent Dilfer, probably to keep his job, had to clean house defensively. He brought in a new defensive coordinator from Navy last year. Only 1 defensive assistant remained, and it's the safeties coach, C.J. Cox. And last year, the numbers were horrible. They gave up 34.3 points per game, 394 yards on the ground per game, overall in the game, 394 overall, 214 yards given up on the ground on average per game last year. Just horrendous. So, Steve Russ is the new defensive coordinator. It was actually from Air Force. I say Navy, Air Force. Steve Russ, the new defensive coordinator. They only had 18 sacks altogether in 2024. Not a good defense. So far, it's not been a good defense whatsoever for UAB this year. Opponents are averaging 472 yards of total offense, 218 yards rushing, so the rushing total has not been great whatsoever. It's almost the same as what it was a season ago. Yeah, 214 a season ago, 4 yards worse so far on average this year. And they're giving up more points, only 2 more points, but more points per game at 36 points per game. Just 1 takeaway in 3 games. They're allowing opponents to convert on third down at 58%, which is just horrible. The lowest point total allowed thus far for UAB was 28 points to Akron last week. Man, as you'd expect, a lot of transfers have come into this program as they're trying to revamp that defense. Pierre Royster, a safety, he transferred from Norfolk State. He leads the team with 23 tackles. Rhode Island linebacker Devin Hightower, second with 21. Linebacker Eli Enos from Nicholls State. He has 7 tackles and a sack. Cornerback Tamarian Crumpley transferred in from Pitt. Perry Fisher, the star player, transferred in from Maryland. Defensive ends Amari Morrison and Jamichael Rogers transferred in from Old Dominion, and Rogers from Miles College, Division II. You've got defensive tackle Denver Warren that transferred in from Sam Houston State. A lot of transfers. Pretty good safety, though, returns for UAB. Cyrod Bryant, who logged 60 tackles in 2024. He has 14 stops and 2 pass breakups so far. Special teams is, I think, somewhere that Tennessee's going to have to be very mindful of. If you're an underdog, you're going to be looking for an advantage anywhere. Solomon Beebe has made some noise kickoff returns, but, I mean, Josh Tuberville is probably not going to give him a chance. He's going to boot it through the end zone. He's returned 11 kickoffs on the year for an average of 27.5 yards, 1 touchdown. That was a 96-yard touchdown. Iverson Hooks has also been averaging 11.4 yards per 11 punt returns, going on with a long of 19 yards. So anyway, again, this is a game that Tennessee should win by as much as Tennessee wants to win by. But so we can say that we actually looked at UAB this week. That is the look of the Blazers, personnel-wise, statistically, what UAB and Trent Dilfer has done so far this year. We'll continue to look at UAB. I'll give you everything I'm looking for in the matchup. Boogie Bentley's going to join the show tomorrow for 2 segments to get you ready for a Football Friday. All that and more is coming up tomorrow. But coming up next, we talked Noah Taylor, Neyland press cord, from throwing it back to the 1957 Tennessee win over Texas A&M in the Gator Bowl. Don't go anywhere. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety picks, more awards in that regard than anyone since as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every single detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. All-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV. You can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every moment count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, where you can move and you can be moved. Throwback Thursday here on Locked On Vols, courtesy of our friend Noah Taylor of Neyland Press Corps. Today, we're going to look back in a moment, but there's a lot of background that leads up to this final outcome of the 1957 Gator Bowl victory. Tennessee 3-0 over Bear Bryant's Texas A&M Aggies. Not going to lie to you, Noah. When I saw your tweet about the story that you posted on this Monday morning, I saw the final score. I'm like, woo, snooze fest, but interesting, okay? And you're going to break it down to us. You got inspiration to write this story from a passage in the Junction Boys, a book that a lot of college football fans are very aware of. What about that inspired you to kind of dig down deep into this specific Tennessee game in history?
Yeah, I've got it right here. I'll go ahead and plug it, but it's by Jim Dent. Book's been out for a long time. I'm not really sure. I think late 90s is when it came out, but I just got around to reading it for the last month, finished it yesterday.
Well, you just learned how to read, so yeah.
And yeah, that too. So I'm taking advantage of it. But phenomenal book. If you like the kind of stories that I tell, not that I'm comparing myself to Jim Dent at all, he's a phenomenal writer. But if you like these kind of stories, I know this isn't about Tennessee, but it's so good. And it's about Texas A&M, Bear Bryant's first team at Texas A&M in 1954. They went out to Junction, Texas, had a very bloody, hellish 10 days there practicing. And his whole goal was to toughen up a program that had really kind of fallen into despair, had been known as kind of soft. But there was a couple Tennessee connections in the story as I was reading it. And I thought, I'm reading a story about his first Texas A&M team. I can write a story that has to do with his last, because Bear Bryant's very last Texas A&M game as its head coach before he went to Alabama was against Tennessee in that 1957 Gator Bowl. But a couple connections here. I found Jimmy Wright, who was a quarterback on that Texas A&M team in 57, ended up being offensive coordinator at Tennessee under Bill Battle in the early 70s, Coach Condrich Holloway. So there was that connection there. But of course, there's the connection between Bowden Wyatt and who was formerly at Arkansas, a Southwest Conference rival at Texas A&M. Him and Bear Bryant had gone up against each other before, and I know we'll talk about that in a minute. But Just was really inspired to write this week about this book. And you're right, on the surface, you look at a 3-0 final score in 1957. There doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of excitement there, but there were little bits here and there I was able to piece together, and I think put together a readable story anyway, if anybody bothered to click on it.
It's more than readable. It's informative. It's entertaining. It's got great context. I love it. I just giving you a hard time. I did see the tweet. And I'm like 3-0. Oh, what are we writing about here? But I mean, again, like I love reading your stories because you go back and you talk about, oh, well, these two teams met 3 years ago and the Sugar Bowl and the final score was 10-7 or 14-7. I'm just like, man, the game has changed so much. A lot of people say for the better. Some people say for the worse. But this is just football at its purest, right? So you got that book, The Junction Boys, that kind of, and yeah, you told me about it, and I'm like, where have I heard that from? You said that ESPN made a movie about it. I'm like, there we go. That's where I've seen that. But you mentioned kind of the head coaching matchup in this game. You got Bowden Wyatt, former Tennessee player under General Neyland, and then of course he goes off and he's an assistant coach, goes off coaches at Arkansas. Of course, Bear Bryant, we know all his stops, A&M now, and then he. Actually, the 57 game was his swan song here, and he left to go back to Alabama. But how often did these two guys meet as coaches before this matchup, and kind of what was the lead into this 1957 Gator Bowl?
Yeah, I thought was interesting is it's brought up a lot in that book, and really anytime you talk about Bear Bryant, it's brought up about the game when he his senior year at Alabama in 1935 when he played against Tennessee on a broken leg. He brings that up a lot in the book to the guys about toughness and how he dealt with injury and things like that. There's funny parts about guys coming to him with elbow injuries and their fingers are all bent up, noses are bleeding. He's like, well, I played against Tennessee in 1935 with a broken leg. So Bowden Wyatt was a freshman on that Tennessee team, so that they kind of interconnected there. But like you'd mentioned, Bowden Wyatt's coaching career began under Neyland, and then he goes to Wyoming and then to Arkansas. In 1954, they crossed paths. That was Bryant's first year at Arkansas or at Texas A&M. And A&M finished 1-9 that year. And you look on the surface, pretty forgettable year. But
probably because they went through hell there for that 10 days in Junction.
Oh yeah, they start off with 111 guys on that trip. They come back with like 40. So it was pretty crazy. And then a week after getting back, they had their season opener against Texas Tech. So. Pretty brutal stretch for them. They go 1-9, but they lost a ton of games, including to Bowden Wyatt's Arkansas team, by one score or less. So a lot of the games were close. One thing that was interesting too was Bear Bryant. We talked a few weeks ago when we were on here about that 1950 game between Tennessee and Kentucky. Bear Bryant was obviously at Kentucky then. The reason he ends up at A&M is he's kind of tired of the attention basketball gets at Kentucky, and he kind of quits on Kentucky after a really successful run. Like, look, I'm not getting the resources I need to be successful here. He ends up at A&M, but he'd wanted to go to Arkansas. He'd been an Arkansas native, and there were a couple of times where Arkansas offered him. The first time they offered him was December 6, 1941. Obviously a bad time. The next day, United States gets dragged in World War II. Paul Bear Bryant joins the Navy. They offered him again, and just nothing. And he was having so much success at Kentucky, he didn't take it. Before that A&M job opened up, he used some back channels to talk to the AD at Arkansas and said, can you bring me back? I'll take the job now. They said, we can't. Bowden Wyatt's the coach. So you got a kind of a connection there. But Bowden Wyatt beats him that first time at Arkansas. And then next year, a year later, Bowden Wyatt's the head coach at Tennessee, and Bear Bryant's kind of starting to turn things around at Texas A&M. So 57 is kind of the kind of a big year for them because John David Crow, who you mentioned earlier, he wins the Heisman Trophy for Texas A&M. Tennessee had a pretty good year, but they fall off at the end. They lost to Ole Miss and Kentucky. Had no idea they were going to go to a bowl game because you're in an era then where it's like 8-9 wins didn't guarantee you anything. Winning the conference did, but you're entering the last part of the year. You didn't know if you were going to get invited at all. Tennessee beat Vanderbilt and got to go to the Gator Bowl, got the invite. Texas A&M, meanwhile, reached number one in the polls. Obviously, John David Crow was having a phenomenal year. But then all the rumors start swirling about Bear Bryant going home to Alabama, and then they start to fall off. They lose to Rice. They fall out. They lose the number one ranking. They lose to Texas. They go from Cotton Bowl national championship to playing in the Gator Bowl as well. But regardless of their fall off, they were still a heavy favorite over Tennessee leading into that.
Not getting the resources that you want at Kentucky, annoyed that it's too much focused on basketball. It's funny. Things literally never change in some regards. You mentioned obviously the coaching background. That's really, I did not know that about Bear Bryant. That's some really good tidbits about how he wanted to be at Arkansas, and it never really worked out. As far as the game, 1957 Gator Bowl, Tennessee wins 3-0. You kind of plant the seeds there of how Tennessee got there, how Texas A&M got there. You mentioned some of the star players: John David Crow, Heisman Trophy winner, Mr. Do Everything. And when I mean everything, run, pass. I don't know if he kicked, but he played defense. And then you've got Bobby Gordon that kind of did a lot for Tennessee's offense. And I love the way you start this story. Again, check out Neyland at Press Corps over on his Substack. Link is in the show notes. I love how you start the story. Bobby Gordon staggered back towards the huddle. The Tennessee tailback, if I could read, seconds after tremendous clash with Texas A&M do-it-all All-American Heisman Trophy winner John David Crow at the 6-yard line, dropped to the muddy Gator Bowl turf. The crowd celebrating the violent collision like Romans in the Colosseum suddenly hushed. That's enough to get anybody intrigued in that matchup. But as I went on and learned about the game, it was a lot of defense. It was penalties for Tennessee. It was turnovers. A punt return for score got called back for a clip. But really what got me is Tennessee's defense allowed Texas A&M nowhere past the 30. Drive started the 30. A drive in the second quarter started the 40. I mean, that's some great defense. And then when it came down to it, you had Bowden Wyatt that decided to kick a field goal with a kicker that has not kicked a field goal at all on the year and kicked made 2 a season ago. It's incredible. I love the story and how Tennessee was able to get this win. A lot of different dynamics that I probably just took all of your talking points, but I thought it was really, really cool how defense, turnovers, penalties, and then a kicker that made his first field goal kick of the year in the last game of the year.
Yeah, no, when I was planning this, which I didn't really come up with the idea till Sunday morning, and I went back and looked at some of the newspaper archives, which I always do, and think, well, what a 3-0 game? What is something I could write? It ended up being over 1,000 words. I always aim for like 500, but I go a little bit further. But I was like, what is a singular play that this entire story could center around, and how do you do? And I'm going into it thinking, well, maybe the field goal. What's the story behind the field goal? Which you had laid it out there. I mean, that's interesting enough. But I mean, the story of this game, when you're reading the guys that were there, the newspaper writers that were there, it was that hit between Bobby Gordon and John David Crow. You go back, you can find it on YouTube. It's awesome. You can go, fast forward to the end or watch the whole thing, but you can fast forward near the end of the game and see this hit. And John David Crow gets up real slow, kind of on one knee. Bobby Gordon, who was Tennessee's workhorse this game. I mean, the guy was really the singular reason they were able to get the ball downfield anyway. He gets up, kind of starts running back to the huddle, and then just falls down on his face. And you're reading the newspaper accounts, and they kind of vary a little bit about the severity of his status, I guess. But Mickey O'Brien, a longtime trainer at Tennessee, got to him. He finally comes to. His teammates are surrounded him. They're like, how many fingers am I holding up? What day is it? All that kind of stuff. He doesn't miss a play. He gets right back up and then gets the ball 3 more times and gets Tennessee to the 1-yard line. So just a tough guy. One of my favorite parts of the story was, they don't really do this anymore, but I think it's really cool. After the game, both teams go to a banquet hosted by the bowl committee and everything. And Bobby Gordon wins MVP, and rightfully so. And he gets up there and the first thing he says is, "Look, I'm sorry how I'm speaking today. I got cotton swabs in my nose." He was all banged up, bruised, nose still bleeding, got cotton shoved up there. And he starts talking about John David Crow. And he said, "Great guy, great player. I think his pass defense is phenomenal, but he needs to work on his tackling." That got a good laugh at everybody, but that was the moment of just massive hit between two guys. And the kicker, Sam Burklow, he, like you had mentioned, no attempts that season, runs out there on the field. If you go back and watch the video, only guy in a clean orange jersey on the field. Nobody looks anything like, you can't even see the colors of the jerseys. There's so much mud. But he goes out there, and it by all accounts, it's an awful kick, but it goes in. It's low. It clears the crossbar. And I guess it doesn't matter because it went in, and Tennessee's defense holds again, and that's the ball game. So, the story itself was Bobby Gordon, and what a tough guy he was to be able to go up against the best player in the country in 1957.
Yeah, Chase McGrath's kick to beat Alabama was ugly too, but it split the uprights and it was good. So really, really cool stuff over here. Neyland Press Corps, looking back at the 1957 Tennessee 3-0 win over Texas A&M in the Gator Bowl. Again, I say this every week. I love how bowls were so fun and enjoyable back then, and there was a banquet the day, later that day, which is just hilarious. Football again at its purest form. So stories like this all the time over at Neyland Press Corps. Great stuff there from Noah Taylor, Neyland Press Corps, for Throwback Thursday right here on Locked On Vols. Interesting stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. Always enjoy learning something with Noah Taylor every single Thursday right here on Locked On Vols for Throwback Thursday. Boogie Bentley coming up on the show tomorrow. Things I'm looking for in a game like this. I'll give you 5, maybe even more things that I want to see checked off those boxes. Checked off those boxes come Saturday afternoon when the game goes final. We'll get Boogie Bentley's thoughts on the matchup and his thoughts on the Georgia loss. All that and more coming up tomorrow on a Football Friday. Guys, gals, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody.